Greetings and salutations. This is the Adjutant. After serving more than 26 years in the United States Army, spending over 20 years adjudicating VA disability claims, working as an attorney, teaching as an adjunct professor, and now having the privilege of speaking with thousands of service members and veterans here on this channel, I've reached a conclusion that honestly surprised me. The greatest military benefit isn't what most people think. If I asked 100 service members that question today, I already know how most of them would answer. Some would say VA disability compensation, others would say GI Bill, some would say TRICARE, others would say military retirement, some would mention the VA home loan, others would point to the thrift savings plan. And here's the interesting part. None of those answers are actually wrong. Every one of those benefits has changed lives. I've watched those benefits help veterans buy their first home. I've seen them pay for college education that changes entire family trees. I've watched disability compensation provide financial stability after years of sacrifice. I've watched military retirement allow people to leave stressful jobs and spend more time with the people they love. These benefits matter. They matter tremendously. But after looking at thousands of military careers, I've come to believe something bigger is happening. The military isn't simply giving you benefits, it's giving you something much greater, something that many people don't recognize until they're approaching retirement. Sometimes they don't realize it until it's almost too late. Now, let me explain what I mean. I want you to imagine two people. Both are 60 years old, both have worked hard, both have been responsible. Both probably would be considered successful by most people, but their mornings look very different. The first person wakes up because the alarm says, hey, it's time to go to work. Their paycheck pays the mortgage. Their employer provides their health care. If they stop working tomorrow, their entire financial life would begin to unravel. Now, retirement isn't really an option. It's just a dream they hope becomes possible someday. Now, picture the second person. They also wake up at 60 years old, but they don't rush. They don't panic. They don't calculate whether they can afford to take a day off, if they decide to work. If not, it's because they enjoy it. If they decide to travel, they can. If they want to spend the afternoon with their grandchildren, they can do that. If they want to volunteer, mentor, teach, start another business, or simply enjoy a quiet cup of coffee on the back porch, they can. So, what's the difference? It's not necessarily the intelligence, folks. It's not luck. It's not even income. The difference is options. One person's life is driven by obligation, the other's driven by choice. And over the years, I've become convinced that choice may be the greatest form of wealth there is. When I was a much younger man, I believed wealth meant having a large paycheck. Like many people, I thought success meant climbing higher, a bigger office, a better title, a more impressive salary. Now, those things aren't bad. There's nothing wrong with ambition. But age has a way of teaching lessons that youth simply cannot understand. Today, at 61 years old, my definition of wealth is very different. Wealth isn't waking up every morning asking yourself how much money you can make today. Wealth is waking up every morning asking yourself what kind of life you want to live today. Those are two completely different questions. One is centered around survival. The other is centered around purpose. And somewhere during my military career, without fully realizing it, I slowly transitioned from one to the other. Not because I was smarter than anyone else, not because I had some secret investment strategy, and certainly not because every decision I made was perfect. Believe me, they weren't. I made my share of mistakes, but the military gave me something that quietly compensated for many of those mistakes. It gave me time. It gave me discipline. It gave me opportunities. It gave me benefits that worked together instead of separately. And over decades, those benefits began producing something much larger than monthly payments or retirement accounts. They began producing freedom. You know, one of the greatest privileges I had seen in my professional life has been watching thousands of military careers unfold. I've watched young soldiers survive at their first duty station with nothing more than a duffel bag and a dream. I've watched them become non-commissioned officers, senior leaders, officers, retirees, business owners, teachers, police officers, entrepreneurs, grandparents. I've also watched people make decisions that cost them opportunities they didn't realize they had. Not because they weren't capable, not because they lacked intelligence, but because nobody ever showed them how all the pieces fit together. They saw the GI Bill as education, the VA home loan as a mortgage benefit, TRICARE as health care, the pension as retirement income, VA disability as compensation, the TSP as an investment account. Each benefit existed in its own separate box, but that's not how I see them anymore. Today, I see something entirely different. Imagine, folks, you're standing in front of a master craftsman who's building a cathedral, if you will. You notice stacks of stone, wood, steel, glass. Individually, none of those materials seem particularly impressive. In fact, some of them look ordinary. But the master builder isn't focused on one individual piece. He's focused on what those pieces become when they're brought together. That's exactly how I view military benefits. Separately, they are valuable. Together, they become transformational. That transformation has a name. It's called optionality. Now, that's not a word we use very often, but I want you to remember it. Optionality simply means having the freedom of choice, the freedom to make decisions based on your values instead of your circumstances, the freedom to pursue work because it gives you life meaning. Not because missing one paycheck would create a financial crisis. The freedom to spend time with your family is when it is important and when it is needed. The freedom to care for your health. The freedom to say no to opportunities that compromise your integrity. The freedom to say yes to opportunities that align with your purpose. That is what the military quietly builds over time. Not overnight, not after one enlistment, not because of one benefit, but because decades of discipline, service creates layers of opportunities that reinforce one after another. And here's what saddens me, folks. I've met veterans who have earned these benefits, but never truly understood them. I met retirees who underestimated what they had built. I've met service members who walked away from extraordinary opportunities because nobody had ever explained the bigger picture. That is why I wanted to make this video, because this isn't just about military benefits. It's about understanding what kind of life those benefits make possible. And once you understand that, you stop asking, what's my most valuable military benefit? Instead, you begin asking a much better question. How do I use every military benefit I've earned to build the life I've always wanted? That's the question we're going to answer. And I believe the answer may completely change the way you think about your military career. So, let's answer that question. What is the most valuable military benefit? Now, after thinking about this for years, my answer is this. It isn't your pension. It isn't your VA disability compensation. It isn't TRICARE. It isn't the GI Bill. It isn't the VA loan. It isn't the thrift savings plan. Those are all extraordinary benefits, but the greatest military benefits, what all of those benefits creates when they're used together, is they create optionality. They create freedom. They create the ability to live your life on your terms. And that's a benefit that many people spend 40 years trying to build. Now, let's start with military retirement. When most people hear the word pension, they think of monthly checks. I think, that's too small. A military pension isn't simply income, it's confidence. It's knowing that every month, regardless of what happens in the economy, a foundation has been laid beneath your feet. That changes how you think. It changes how you invest. It changes how you approach risk. It changes the jobs you're willing to accept. When you're no longer making every decision from a place of financial fear, you begin making decisions from a place of purpose. Now, let's also add VA disability compensation. I've spent more than 20 years adjudicating disability claims. I have read thousands upon thousands of files. I have seen the sacrifices. I have seen the injuries. I have seen the illnesses. I have seen the long-term consequences of military service. VA disability compensation was never intended to make someone wealthy. It exists because service sometimes leaves lasting effects. Now, for those who qualify, that compensation can remove enormous financial pressure. Maybe it helps pay the mortgage. Maybe it covers medication. Maybe it allows someone to reduce their work hours and focus on healing. Maybe it creates breathing room for a family that's been carrying a heavy burden. That's not just money, that's peace. Now, think about TRICARE. Healthcare is one of the biggest reasons people postpone retirement. They aren't afraid of leaving work. They aren't afraid of losing healthcare. Think about how many Americans stay in jobs they no longer enjoy simply because they can't afford to walk away. Military retirees often have access to healthcare that dramatically changes that equation. Again, another layer of freedom. Now, let's talk about the Thrift Savings Plan. The TSP may be one of the least exciting conversations you'll ever have. Why? It's not flashy, no flashy lights, no promises of overnight riches, no sensational headlines, just consistency. Month after month, year after year, decade after decade. Now, here's something that I've learned. Extraordinary wealth is usually built very quietly. While everyone else is chasing the next hot investment, disciplined people are simply continuing to invest. The military teaches consistency. The TSP rewards consistency. That's a partnership that can produce remarkable results over time. Then there's the GI Bill. People often think of it as a college benefit. It certainly is. But it is also an opportunity benefit. Education opens doors. It creates new careers. It increases confidence. It expands earning potential. It allows people to reinvent themselves. I have seen service members who completely transform their lives because of educational opportunities they never could have afforded otherwise. That's not just a degree, that's another set of options. The VA home loan works much the same way. Yes, it helps many veterans become homeowners, but homeowners can also become one of the foundations of long-term wealth. Why? Because equity grows, assets appreciate, financial stability increases. Once again, another layer supporting the whole structure. Now, here's what fascinates me, folks. Notice what happens when you combine these benefits. Your pension provides stability. VA disability reduces financial pressure. TRICARE protects your health care. TSP builds long-term wealth. The GI Bill expands your opportunities. The VA home loan helps you build equity. None of them compete with each other. They strengthen each other. Think about building a house. A foundation alone isn't enough. The walls aren't enough. A roof alone isn't enough. Windows alone aren't enough. But when every piece comes together, you suddenly have a home. Military benefits work exactly the same way. Individually, yes, they're valuable, but collectively, they create entirely different future. That's why I believe we've been asking the wrong question all along. The question isn't which military benefit is the best. The better question is, how do I use every benefit I've earned to reinforce all the others? That's where transformation begins. Now, let me give you a practical example. Imagine you have two retirees, right? Both completed successful military careers. Both receive similar pensions. Both qualify for many of the same benefits. One spends everything they receive. They never invest consistently. They never create long-term plan. They drift from one financial decision to the next. Then you have the second retiree who actually thinks differently. They continue investing. They protect their wealth. They use the GI Bill to create another career. They manage debt carefully. They understand taxes. They continue learning. Now, 10 years later, those two lives can look dramatically different, not because one person earned different benefits, but because one understood how to use those benefits strategically. That's one of the biggest lessons I've learned. Military benefits don't automatically create wealth, they create opportunity. Now, your decisions determine whether the opportunity becomes freedom. You know, over the years, I've heard people say, I just want to make a lot of money. You know, I understand that. There's nothing wrong with wanting financial security, but I've discovered something that's even more valuable. I'd rather have choices than possessions. I'd rather own my calendar than own another luxury vehicle. I'd rather enjoy dinner with people I love than spending another evening trapped in an office chasing another promotion I don't really need. I'd rather wake up excited about the day ahead than wake up wondering how much longer I have to do this work that no longer fulfills me. That's wealth. That's real wealth. Not because it can always be measured in dollars, but because it can be measured in peace. Now, as I've grown older, I've become convinced that peace is one of the highest returns any investment can produce. When your finances are in order, your mind becomes quieter. When your future feels secure, fear begins losing its grip. When you've built multiple layers of financial stability, you stop living from one emergency to the next. That's what military benefits can help you create. It's not perfection, it's not unlimited wealth, but stability, confidence, and freedom. Now, in just a moment, I want to tell you why this lesson became deeply personal for me. Because somewhere along my own journey, from a young soldier to an Army officer, from an attorney to a VA adjudicator, from a professor to speaking with all of you here on this channel, I realized something that completely changed my definition of success. And once I understood it, I stopped chasing a bigger paycheck. I started building a better life. Let me leave you with something personal, because everything I've shared with you today isn't just something I've studied. It's something that I've lived. When I first raised my right hand to enter the United States Army, I wasn't thinking about retirement. I wasn't thinking about financial independence. I certainly wasn't thinking about optionality. I was thinking about making it through basic training, learning my job, serving well, earning promotions, taking care of soldiers, completing the next mission. Like most young service members, I was focused on what was directly in front of me. What I couldn't see was that every year of faithful service was quietly building something much bigger than I understood. Every promotion, every deployment, every PCS move, every difficult assignment, every leadership position, every contribution to my retirement, every lesson in discipline, every sacrifice, every challenge, every setback I had to overcome. Each one was adding another brick to a foundation that I wouldn't fully appreciate until decades later. You know, life has a way of revealing its greatest lessons in reverse. When you're 25 years old, retirement feels like another lifetime away. When you're 35, you're busy raising children, paying bills, serving deployments, navigating military life, and simply just trying to keep everything together. When you're 45, you begin realizing that time is moving much faster than expected. Then one day, you look back and suddenly you understand that all of those ordinary days weren't ordinary at all. They were preparing you. That's exactly what happened to me. After my Army career, I had the privilege of becoming an attorney. I spent years practicing law, well over a decade. I spent more than 20 years at the Department of Veterans Affairs. I adjudicated VA disability claims. I was a homeless veterans coordinator. I was a Yellow Ribbon Project coordinator. I gave speeches and briefings to veterans all around the area. I had the opportunity to teach as an adjunct college professor. And now I have the privilege of serving all of you through this channel. People sometimes ask me, which career was my favorite? Honestly, I don't know that I can answer that because each season of my life prepared me for the next one. The Army prepared me to lead. The law taught me how to think critically. The VA reminded me every single day of the tremendous sacrifices made by our nation's veterans. Teaching strengthened my ability to communicate complex ideals simply. And this channel has given me something I've never expected. The opportunity to hopefully help someone I've never met make a better decision for their future. When I step back and look at my life, I realize something. None of those chapters existed independently. They were connected. The discipline I learned in uniform followed me into every courtroom. The leadership I developed in the Army followed me into every classroom. The patience I developed adjudicating claims now help me explain military benefits to thousands of people all around the world. Everything built upon everything else. Isn't that exactly what we've been talking about today? That's how military benefits work. One strengthens another. One supports another. Together, they create something extraordinary. Now, let me tell you something I wish every young soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Guardian, and Coast Guardsman understand. You don't have to become a millionaire to become financially free. You don't have to own multiple businesses. You don't have to drive an expensive vehicle. You don't have to impress anyone. What you need is a plan. You need patience. You need consistency. You need discipline. Fortunately, those happen to be qualities military service teaches exceptionally well. The challenge is that many people stop applying those qualities once they take off the uniform. Don't make that mistake. Continue investing, continue learning, continue building, continue preparing, continue living beneath your means, continue protecting your health, continue protecting your relationships, continue protecting your integrity, because wealth without integrity isn't success. Success without peace isn't success either. As I've grown older, my definition of wealth has changed dramatically. Today, I don't believe the wealthiest person is necessarily the person with the largest investment account. I believe the wealthiest person is the one who controls their own time. The one who can say, I don't have to do it. I don't have to remain in a job that's destroying my health. I don't have to tolerate a workplace that violates my values. I don't have to postpone seeing my family because I'm chasing one more promotion. I don't have to sacrifice everything that matters for something that ultimately won't. That is freedom. And I believe freedom is the highest return your military career can ever produce. You know, one of my favorite verses in Scripture reminds us that where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. I spend a lot of time reflecting on that because our treasure isn't always money. Sometimes our treasure is our attention. Sometimes our treasure is time. Sometimes it's our priorities. Wherever we consistently invest ourselves, that's what eventually shapes our lives. My encouragement to you is this: use every military benefit you've earned. Don't leave them on the table. Understand them. Protect them. But don't stop there. Use them to build a life that reflects your values, a life where your family knows you're present, a life where your faith has room to grow, a life where your health matters, a life where service continues even after military service ends. Because retirement shouldn't simply mean you stop working. Retirement should mean you've gained the freedom to work on what matters most. If you're still serving today, think beyond your next promotion. Think beyond your next duty station. Think beyond your next assignment. Think about the life you're building 20 years from now. If you're approaching retirement, begin looking at your benefit as one integrated strategy instead of separate programs. If you've already retired, I hope today's conversation reminds you just how remarkable these earned benefits truly are. And if you've already separated from the military, don't assume you missed the opportunities. Many of these benefits remain available to you. The key is understanding what you've earned and using it wisely. I'll leave you with one final thought. One day, none of us will care how impressive our resume looked. We won't care how large our offices was. We won't care what kind of vehicle sat in our driveway. We'll care about the people we loved, the lives we influenced, the wisdom we've passed on, the character we've built, the peace we found, and whether we use the gifts God gave us to make someone else's journey a little easier. If your military career helped you build that kind of life, then you receive something far more valuable than a paycheck. You receive something far more valuable than any single benefits. You receive the opportunity to live life with freedom, to live with purpose, and to leave a legacy. And in my opinion, that's the most valuable military benefit of them all. If you found value in today's video, I'd be honored if you subscribe to the channel. Every Sunday and Wednesday, we talk about military wealth, retirement, VA benefits, financial strategy, and building a life-lasting sacrifice. And every Thursday, I share personal stories and life lessons that have shaped who I am, because I believe wisdom is one of the greatest inheritance we can leave to the next generation. Thank you for allowing me to spend this time with you. I never take this privilege for granted. And so there you have it. I hope this has been helpful. I wish you all blessings and blessings, and I'll see you in the next one. Shalom.